so, because I think you can only hear it like as close as it is to your face.
Okay,
All right. Thank you so much for coming to. Excuse me. I'm gonna start again because you didn't come to me.
You came to me, which I love.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Christian, for coming on my podcast, Unholy and Curious, episode 3.
Yes, what an honor.
What an honor to have you. And we're sitting in your incredible studio in New York City, which is spectacular. It's beautiful. It's brand new. You just moved, right?
Just moved like 3 weeks ago. Yep.
And how do you like being in Soho versus where your studio was before?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, like, 'cause Soho is like so, it's just like feels very New York. Also, the people are a little bit chicer down here. The food's great. It's just nice. It's just like totally different vibe. We were in Midtown and we were like a block from Trump Tower, which was the worst ever in the last couple years. So we're happy to be moved. Yeah,
I can imagine.
It was the worst.
Yeah, definitely, especially with all the psychotic protesting that goes on around Trump Tower.
All day.
Completely warranted.
Yes,
and they should continue to protest even though he's out of office.
Yeah.
I'm here for your fashion show, which is incredible. And so I want to know, what is the theme of this collection? Because by the time this comes out, the collection will already have been released.
Yeah. I mean, I think like it's so hard because like, you know, you're doing a collection, but you're not like, it's hard to like be inspired by the same things as you normally are now that we're in just this new world of fashion, and it's so different, and how people shop is different, and just everything. So it was really more like fantasy. I kind of was like, I took a trip to Colorado, and I kind of dreamt up like, what if there was this weird colony of like psychedelic world that like existed in the mountains that was cut off from the rest of the world. That's kind of what it is. So it's like lodge meets glamour in the mountains in some weird way. And however that, I don't know what that will be, but that's what it is.
And I feel that, especially from my looks, because my looks in the show, I'm wearing sort of like a plaid, quotidian moment. And then also my second look, which is a gorgeous gown, almost looks like the grain of wood.
Yeah.
So it sort of has that same sort of like woodsy, naturey vibe to it. What led you to picking sort of like a more nature themed moment for this season, considering we're in such a sterile time in history where everybody's sort of stuck inside?
And literally that is the reason. I think it's because like I think people forgot like that nature is like such like how we're all gonna survive through this, like being outside or in our own element or in our own world. Like I think we all got shut in, and now it's like maybe we do need to like reconnect with like the outside a little bit. So I guess that was what it was. It's like a place of like trees and, you know, flowers, and all those things are very inspiring. And I think sometimes we forget, like, because they're natural things. So I think that was what it came from. And yeah, and yours is like this hooded almost cloak. It almost has that little bit of like Red Riding Hood-esque, but in a very like couture way, was the idea.
Very expensive Red Riding Hood. Red Riding Hood with a budget.
Literally, like it's like silk velvet. It's probably the most expensive fabric in the collection, actually.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen a lot of the looks yet because we haven't done the show yet. I've only seen the looks that I've worn.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite look that you would like to describe that I will be able to splice in?
I mean, it's hard because I love a lot. Like the coats at the beginning of the collection, I think really makes sense for the vibe of like being in maybe Aspen or Colorado or wherever you are. And then as it goes to the end, it does get a bit more like fairy, like whimsical. So it's like I try to take everyone like on a journey, because I think it's like important, especially if you're gonna do a show. I think it's like you can't just like I don't think it's as interesting to like put a blazer down the runway. Like I think it really has to be like a show if you're gonna do it. Yeah. So I think the looks at the end are quite they're quite a moment. But I think a lot of color actually at the end of the collection too. Starts off kind of brown and rich and neutral, and then ends in like a jolt of color.
It almost sort of makes you realize the joy of color, especially when you start with more muted tones, and then towards the end there's like an explosion of like exuberance.
Yeah.
And color is so optimistic, and especially I like that idea of sort of in the beginning it's dark. I did see the board a little bit. So it's dark and it's brown, and it kind of reminds me of like winter going into spring.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's like if you're ever in the mountains, watching a sunset in the mountains is such an amazing thing, because you're surrounded by dark grayness. Everything is like it's kind of not really that beautiful because it's just stone. And then when it does sunset, like that's the idea. You get all these amazing colors and tones, and that was, I guess, the idea. So in a way, it's like just again, like a natural thing, natural progression.
And also, this show has a really sort of exciting performance element to it, but I find that's sort of a motif in a lot of your collections. They're very, the most viral ones have sort of these performative elements to them.
I just think it's more exciting. It's like I think also like everybody goes to all the editors, they go to so many things, and I think I admire like designers that do put on more of a performance type piece, because then it feels like there's more of a reason to do it, I guess.
Well, it's a show.
Yeah, it's a show. It's like anybody, like why we're fans of actors, why we're fans of Broadway stars. Like you want to be part of their world. So I think that's why I like to do it that way, and it makes the clothes kind of come to life a little bit.
Definitely, I agree with that. Yeah. And you have such a close sort of relationship now with celebrities, and I think that it's so interesting to watch your career progress from a reality TV show to now you're doing red carpet dresses all the time. You're like a staple of red carpet now. And I think that's really spectacular. How did those relationships nurture and develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was like, it was so interesting because like at the beginning of my career, I had like maybe a different fan base. It was more like a lot of famous people were fans of me, because my clothes were maybe more like out there and they were more like exuberant. So I think that was really interesting. I didn't have the industry, but I had a very famous woman. Like, I mean, I remember some of my first people I dressed was like Gaga and Rihanna and Oprah and like such big people. So it was so funny to have that. And then, so it was such a hard balance, because I was like, I'm dressing like Gaga like every day. Like, isn't it weird that like other people don't support? So that was a really hard thing. But I think what was great is that I also like find people and become close when they're maybe still new. Like, so, and then I continue I support them. Like I started dressing Zendaya when nobody would dress Zendaya. Now Zendaya is like the most sought after fashion girl like that exists.
Totally.
And same with like Lizzo. Like Lizzo actually performed at my after party like 5 years ago when she didn't have an album. Like, because I loved Lizzo, because she was like just this crazy, insane, amazing performance artist. And that's how you keep it. Like, that's how you keep, being able to do things. Same with Cardi. Like, nobody wanted to dress Cardi in the beginning of her career. She was like, it was like insane. And now she's a couture fashion girl. So it's such an interesting thing. Get them early, and then they remember, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like they're all returning the favor in a very big way, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And especially you're very well known for dressing different body types on the red carpet, especially.
And that helps too.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these celebrities that a lot of these high fashion establishment houses they're scared to touch these celebrities, but you have absolutely no problem making them look gorgeous and making them look like they belong on that red carpet amongst everybody else, regardless of what designer that they're wearing. And I think that's really a special talent of yours and something spectacular. And I think that just goes to show that you're really on the cutting edge. You were really on the cutting edge of body positivity and inclusivity in fashion.
Yeah.
And so I kind of am curious to know what was sort of the moment that sparked that, okay, the tides are changing and I want to be on the forefront of this movement of body positivity and inclusivity in fashion?
Yeah, it's like such an interesting thing, because really at the beginning, like I just didn't really think about it so much, that it was like not like a not normal, I guess. I didn't really notice so much because I grew up like in a house, like my mom is like a curvy woman. She's like a 16, 18. And then my sister is a size 0 ballet dancer. So I always had like extremes like in my life. So I think that helped because it wasn't that weird to see like all these different size people. But then I think when I started putting like the girls on the runway and then dressing all these different, like, if Oprah calls, like, what, you're not going to say yes? Like, that would be weird to me. So I was like, okay. And I think that's why I was able to, like, dress people like Michelle Obama, like, and because they were like, oh, Christian can do it. I want to wear him. And that's, I think, what helped as I moved along. So I think that it was a really interesting thing that just happened. I don't think I, like, made it such a huge effort in the beginning, but now I make an effort to make sure that people understand that it's like it should be.
So I remember watching The View, and I remember them discussing Leslie Jones's red carpet outfit and how she was discussing how nobody wanted to dress her, and that you sort of came to her rescue and were able to dress her. And I felt like that was such a pivotal moment for you because it really sort of, outside of this realm of you being just a fashion designer in New York and you having a past presence on reality television, it sort of brought your name to the forefront again in a really sort of incredible way. And everybody else took your lead. So now it's like Versace, which 10 years ago was all white girls who were from, you know, Russia on the catwalk. And now to see sort of their entire casting and the way that they dress changed in the past really like 2 years. It did it took a very long time for a lot of these people. But you, I think, sort of had such a positive influence with all of the positive press coverage that you got from dressing Leslie Jones. What was that experience like dressing Leslie Jones? Did she come to you? Did you go to her? Because that's such an interesting story in your career.
Always a tweet. It was literally like she tweeted and like couldn't find a dress, and I tweeted back and I was like, I want to do something, and it just was so organic. It was like so easy. But I was just a big fan of Leslie. Like, she's so genius and hilarious, and I just wanted to make her something because I wanted her to like come in for a fitting, and it's the most hilarious fittings ever because she just screams the whole time. It's hilarious. But that was what it was. And then I was like, well, you know what? It's like was weird because she was like in a huge movie. Like it was like strange that she had a hard time. And then that goes with like models on the runway. Like we started showing like curvy girls. Like obviously like Precious is now in Versace and having a moment. But I was using Precious 6 years ago. Like Precious has been in my show for literally, it's been I think almost five years. Isn't that hilarious that it took so long for other brands to now start using those type of girls? It's like, but they're amazing, so why not, you know?
They are amazing. And to think that there's only one body type that can be considered beautiful or attractive or worthy of wearing haute couture or high fashion is just bananas to me, because at the end of the day, when you think about the customer and who actually has the money to buy these clothes, are these women who have tens of thousands of dollars to spend on a gown, are they really built like Natasha Polly? No. Probably not.
No, they're all curvy and that's what's funny. Like I started noticing that in the beginning of my career, which is I think why we were able to kind of survive so long, because literally like our customers are like, you know, they have body, and we were like, okay, we have to have something for them. And we have a, you know, really skinny it girl, downtown girl too that shops, but we have both. So we had to like give them both.
Yeah. I want to know sort of what is the process for you when you're designing a collection? Do you have in your head, do you have a girl and you're like, okay, this is the girl I'm dressing this season? Yeah. Or do you have a character, or do you have a storyline? Like where do you begin from point A to and then end at point B?
Yeah, I mean, it starts usually with like an idea and a concept, and then it does evolve. And I mean, I'm a big like fabric lover, so that really helps like just inspire anything because I love textiles, always have. But then it's like kind of a muse and in a way, but I do have such a diverse kind of customer, which is why I think like I do think like in each collection there is kind of something for a lot of different types of people. And then there's things that like some not for everybody. Like a lot of people will not like every piece, but you just can't. We kind of learned a while ago, like you just can't please everyone, and that's when I started being like, okay, well then I'm kind of just gonna make whatever I want, and now I just kind of make whatever I want, and I hope for the best. I mean, sometimes I get nervous because I'm like, who will buy this? But you just kind of hope and pray, and sometimes the funniest things is the things that get the most press sell the least, and the things that people just push to the side are top pieces. So that's the really hard balance that we're still navigating, and I think we'll be navigating forever.
Especially because fashion is changing so much, and especially when an event like a pandemic comes around, and everybody goes from wearing beautiful clothes
and going out,
and now nobody has anywhere to go, especially a brand like yours that is so focused on sort of like event wear.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that as a designer? Yeah.
It's rough. I think I kind of figured out a way to kind of, we balance the business with other things, and there still is like, we have, you know, wearable things and t-shirts and easy things that people can buy, and that kind of supports. And then I've kind of decided to keep the rest of this like very fantasy, and if it sells, it does, and if it doesn't, it's okay. Like I try not to put it all focused on this now. I think that's the hardest part, which is why a lot of brands are struggling, because like, let's say they only sold at department stores, and now department stores are struggling. If they only, you know, if you only have one avenue, then you're done. And that was luckily for us, like we have multiple ways of like funding the company.
Yeah.
But it is hard. It's really hard because there's no events, and no one needs a dress, but we're figuring it out. Surprisingly, weirdly enough, actually, we've sold some very expensive dresses recently. I have no idea what they're doing or going, but I wish them the best of luck. So
that's
we'll see.
awesome.
Yeah. It's really weird. Like I'm like, when you get like someone buys like a $30,000 dress, and we're like, but where are they going? But we don't ask questions. I don't want to know. I don't care.
Yeah, you don't want to know.
I don't care.
Do you develop personal relationships with your customers ever?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you have to.
So is that a way that I find that a lot of designers that I've worked with, I feel like there's a lot of separation from the customer and them.
Yeah.
Just because they're kind of in their ivory tower.
Yeah.
And especially when a designer reaches a celebrity status and they're only hanging out with Naomi Campbell and Beyonce, it sort of is like at that point, do they really know who is saving up their pennies to buy a piece? Yeah.
That's actually my biggest thing. I'm like, I don't know. I think also it's very hard to like grow your business if you're not really in it with the people that are buying it, because I mean now like we're almost 15 years in the business, and like we did it, we survived, like we're still here, and like otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't have made it, because it's just so hard. You have to know who these women are that are buying these clothes, because otherwise, I don't know. They also feel more invested now, especially because of the pandemic. Yeah. We still have people buying stuff because they like want to support the brand, you know? I think that went away for a lot of brands, because if you don't have any like, it's like no skin in the game. Like you're like, who cares? You know, you're just buying a brand to buy.
Definitely. And especially now in a world where everything is very polarized and very political, do you ever say no to certain people asking for pieces just because?
You have to a little bit.
Yeah. I'm always very curious of that, because I find that there are some brands that, you know, are sort of like, whatever, I'll give anybody a dress who wants one. And then there are other brands who are like, no, I am not going to let you wear this because you stand against everything I stand for.
Yeah.
Especially, I just am thinking back to the Trump inauguration, and I am sure somebody must have asked you for a dress.
They bought clothes. They all did.
They bought the clothes.
Thank God it didn't work. No, yeah, it's really hard. It's like you want to support people, like you really do, and I'm a big believer in that. But it is a hard balance, because especially like in a political world, you know, I'm a young, like, gay fashion designer that, like, has all women employees. And, like, I'm like, so you stand for all if you don't stand for all those things that I need, then why would I, like, give my art to you? Yeah. So that's kind of how I felt. And I still feel that way. And I feel that way sometimes even just, with there's actresses and musicians and everybody, like you can slip on what you feel and support. And I think you have to be aware of it a little bit.
What do you think about the power of politicians in dress, especially because Kamala Harris's stepdaughter.
Yeah. So interesting.
That's very interesting. She wore one Miu Miu coat to the inauguration that nobody was at because it was a pandemic, really.
Right.
And it sort of launched her into stardom in a very interesting kind of totally Gen Z way.
Yeah.
That I don't think could have happened in any other way. And I think sort of a lot of times politicians have always been revered, first ladies have always been revered for their sense of fashion and sensibilities, but now it's sort of like
the kids.
The stepdaughter of the vice president is now a fashion icon somehow. How do you sort of reconcile politics and fashion in general?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the balance. It's like, obviously, like, I'm really honored and glad, like, we've dressed Jill Biden. We dressed her for the DNC. It was amazing. I'm really happy that I get to be one of the young American designers that have dressed another first lady. Is awesome. I do think it's hard. Like, I think what's happening, with the craze over, any like child of a political person, I do think it's a little hard because it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if it makes sense for everyone. There are a lot of people in the industry that I think like, work hard at the business. And so that's like the tough part.
Yeah.
It is like supporting someone very quickly. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard balance. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it in general, always, because sometimes it can be scary to get on board so quickly right away.
Definitely.
And I think that's like the interesting thing that we have to figure out. I think just as like a culture too, because there's a lot of people that like, I think want to be in this business and want to model or be in a campaign, and what are we doing with them? And yeah.
And I've always felt like you've done such an incredible job giving a platform and a space to models who are incredible beauties who perhaps might not have been embraced by the mainstream. Precious is a great example of this, because it took people a very long time to come around to her. And it's not like she is any more or less beautiful now than she was then.
Exactly.
It's just a timing thing. And I just think that sometimes, this is my personal opinion, I find that sometimes people rush into giving whoever the viral person of the moment is a moment of their own in fashion. And I sometimes feel conflicted as a spectator and lover of fashion, because not just the nepotism aspect of that, or sometimes just sort of like the blatant like political lover association, or just sort of like the fandom of that person of the moment. But what happens when that person's viral moment is over and they've said some tweet resurfaces that they did in 2015 where they said some crazy bullshit. Like, what do you do like at that point? Like, where are we left? What are we supposed to I get what you
struggling
mean, to like
I get what you
articulate
mean. Like,
what I'm saying.
It is.
Are we rushing?
I think it's literally like it is finding like the balance. I think that's what I try to do, and I think that that's like the main thing that we all can figure out. I think actually what worked was, I'm glad it was Prenza, because Prenza is a great brand that's worked really hard. They're young guys. It wasn't the Gucci of the world, plastering it all over billboards. That I like. That made me feel like, okay, at least it's like something interesting there. And I think that's because that's what's so funny about the Precious scenario for me, really honestly. Like, I mean, we've been friends for so long, and to see her on a Versace like billboard, almost like finally, is then amazing but it is so funny that it took so long. So it's like, are you happy? You have to be, but then you're kind of annoyed because it's like, it's the push and the pull. So I think that's how I try to approach it now. And now also what's good is I kind of stopped looking for like approval from people. And I just started like, if I love a girl or an actress or whatever, if I personally, then I'm going to dress them, or I'm going to put them in my show, or I'm going to, and I don't even, and if you aren't interested anymore, then that's okay. That's how I decided.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about growing up. So where did you grow up?
I'm from Maryland, Annapolis. It's kind of like a very like little like marina town, but then very strict because it's like the Naval Academy's there, and it's a funny place, and but great. Yeah, my mom was like, really open and let me be such a creative kid, which was really helpful. And
that's
nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
Were you ever bullied as a kid in school for being gay? Because I remember growing up on the East Coast, and you're a little bit older than me, but not even by that much. And when I was growing up, it was prior to Glee and sort of this mainstream gay acceptance movement. Yeah. And I actually, one of the first sort of LGBTQ friendly shows that I can personally think of, besides Queer Eye, which I wasn't really into as a kid, was Project Runway.
Yeah, it was.
And so that was really sort of like, in my opinion, the first time that I was able to see people like me. Yeah. People who were a part of, who loved differently and thought differently about the world and wanted to express themselves creatively outside of like cooking. Because when I think about creativity on television, I think of HGTV, which is like flipping houses, which like wasn't for me. And also the cooking channel, which
well, Project Runway either. When I was on that show, it was in 2008. I was 20 years old. I was like a very flamboyant gay person about to be on television to the world, and I didn't even think about it, which is so bad because I mean, of course, the difference of like, I had such a fan, and then I had so many people, obviously it was a really hard time because also that was Twitter launched in 2008. Yeah. It was so crazy to read such interesting comments. And then also like the iPhone just came out. I mean, everything really happened then. So, and then Amy Poehler she parodied me on SNL.
Oh, yes.
So that was a crazy moment. So I was in this like pulp culture world as this like young flamboyant boy. So it was really hard actually, because I had a lot of fans, but I also had a lot of people that like hated how I was because I was too gay.
Did you get
that was hard.
Did you get a lot of hate from people within the community? You find?
Yeah,
because there's a lot of femphobia within gay culture.
In gay world. Like I wasn't a big muscle gay boy. Like I was a little princess running around, and I loved
trendy
that. Yeah. And I was just a little kid, but I was like a naive, like, I just was living like my young, like gay fantasy. I was a kid who auditioned for a fashion show and then all of a sudden like won randomly. I mean, I had no idea that would ever happen. I just went on for fun, really.
You had one of the best seasons too, by the way.
Yeah, and it was really talented people. It just was an interesting time. And I mean, growing up, I will say though, I had challenges for sure, but I pushed myself out of it to get into worlds that I felt good in because like I went to an art high school at Baltimore School for the Arts. I didn't go to a normal high school, so I was around creative people. Like I tried to submerge, and my sister was a ballet dancer, so I was always with ballerinas and backstage, and I tried to submerge myself because I knew that where I lived, it wouldn't be as accepted.
Yeah.
So it was hard at the beginning, but you have to like find your group, find your people. Yeah,
definitely. It's just crazy to think that even in 2008, which isn't even that long ago,
I know
how homophobic and openly homophobic like society was.
Yeah.
And just to
and I have the most, like, let me tell you, I have a client who shops my clothes who still is a little pretty, very buttoned up, like Republican women
Yeah.
sometimes, who are, not really. And that is really hard too. That was how my whole career was at the beginning. And I didn't realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't really sell to those type of people. Now I've figured out how to like focus on not that, but it was hard in the beginning.
Yeah. And especially when you're trying to establish a name for yourself.
Yeah.
And the mainstream fashion establishment is sort of looking at you and saying, how can we take this kid seriously? He comes from a reality TV show, but now like, look at you so many years later in Soho in a gorgeous studio, designing yet another collection that will be worn by so many celebrities. It will be featured in so many different magazines. I think it's just like incredible to see your journey and where you started and now where you're going. And take me through a little bit of like what that journey has been like. How challenging was it for you to be sort of like respected by mainstream fashion establishment in the beginning? Because I think about people who win America's Next Top Model, for example, how difficult it is for them to like, nobody who wins America's Next Top Model ever becomes America's Next Top Model.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of, actually Winnie Harlow was on America's Next Top Model.
Yeah.
But she didn't win, right?
I don't think, no, she didn't. But Winnie is the good example of a great success story.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are in that way a little bit similar, that you were able to make a name for yourself, even though it took time.
Yeah, it takes time. That's what it is. You just have to like, in the beginning, you have to have the challenges though, because then you figure out how to navigate and overcome. And that's literally like all I did. I just focused on like, it was really hard in the beginning. You had to keep doing it, keep putting it. Honestly, sometimes you just have to put it in people's face, and then they come around. They're like, oh, okay, I'm into this now. And then when you're making money, you're like, well, then you're fine, because then you're like, well, I don't really care anymore if people don't support, because I'm like, we're doing okay. So then
you money.
Yeah. So then you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm okay with that. And then you like have a lot, and then you're like, oh, but all these like famous people wear clothes. I'm like, well, that's fine. If I have, it's just a funny thing. It was really hard though. But then as it started to change, like, and I was like getting Vogue covers, and like amazing, beautiful things were happening in major moments at like the Met and stuff like that. And then it felt really good. But I really don't hold that to, and I still don't, I don't ever hold it to be like, that will be my success. I think it really is more, I just want people to know that like we always supported like people, and you can't ever take that away from like my brand. And I think that that's like a bigger picture.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's, I was talking to Jeremy about this on my last podcast, because he's another example.
Jeremy does it too.
Yeah. Jeremy's another example of somebody who sort of was snubbed by mainstream fashion establishment for not being in step with what they considered to be chic or,
Jeremy took so many risks, and I mean,
and
still does. And,
and
and those, and people forget sometimes, because you're just like looking at a picture sometimes, but the risk taking in this business is so dramatic, because people either love it or they hate it. And they're so mean and so passionate. They hate it so much. So you're like, it really can really like weigh on you. So people like Jeremy, and it's hard. It's really hard to do it, and you have to have such a thick skin, and but I always say like, okay, well, if it didn't work that season, we're on to the next.
That's the great thing about fashion, is it's kind of like a Ferris wheel in a way.
It is.
And it's like there's
and you can reinvent next season.
Yeah, exactly. Next season it's a wheel, and whatever was uncool this season goes around the wheel, and then 10 years later it's everybody has to have it. Totally. I mean, it's just so funny to think about like 2000s fashion making like such a strong reemergence in,
I know, it's so funny.
The
Brittany keeps us very humble, because she's wearing the same clothes that she's been wearing since 2001. Yeah. So she's the only one still doing it.
Do you ever want to dress Brittany?
Of course, everyone does, but you can't even get to her. That's it's so sad.
Free Brittany.
Free Brittany. You can't get to her. Oh,
this is the Free Brittany podcast.
Really is. Can you imagine?
I would love to see her make some sort of like return to the public eye outside of her Instagram. I think it's, I want to know who are some people that dead or alive that you would love to dress.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, there's so many people. I mean, old school, like, I don't know, Katharine Hepburn, and, you know, the classics would be amazing. But then, you know, I don't know. It's like, I haven't really dressed Cate Blanchett, and I always has thought she was a really interesting kind of like chameleon, wears different things. I really loved her. Haven't done anything for her. But to be honest, I mean, I had a really long list for a long time, and we feel like really good. We've checked off a lot.
Yeah.
I've gotten to dress everyone. I really always wanted to like dress Angelina Jolie, and we got to do that, and like Gwyneth, and just the good people that I love. I really was fans of, you know? Yeah.
Is there a specific movie or a specific film that inspires you that you constantly return to for fashion?
I mean, I really I know this is like funny, but like my last collection, I kind of was a little bit inspired by the movie Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, which is a silly movie, but
I've never seen that.
You never seen it? Okay, it's Christina Applegate. It's an 80s movie because I was obsessed with fashion in the 80s. I was born in 85, and that's what I grew up with, and it's silly, but she goes and works at this fashion company.
Okay.
And at the end, she like has to design a collection and put on this fashion show at her house.
Yeah.
And I just really love it because it kind of was exactly like, I felt like just like what I wanted my journey to be.
Yeah.
And I did it. I did it last season. I got to put a bridge over my pool, and that's exactly what happened. And Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. And it was the best moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed that you got to like live that fantasy.
I finally lived it. And Clueless was my favorite movie, like growing. I mean, I just thought the clothes were they were such a push. Every other movie coming out was grungy and dark, and it was so like, and now Alicia Silverstone's like my best friend, so that's also weird. You know, it's like full circle.
Full circle. It's interesting. I truly believe in the power of manifestation because I feel like I manifested becoming a model, like the kind of the woman in my head that I dreamed of being as like a little trans kid growing up in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. I was able to like whatever vision I created for myself. I think I just sort of was so desperately desired to have my vision of myself and my imagination that over time I just sort of became that person incredibly. And I feel like you sort of manifested like a lot of incredible things for yourself as well. Like what are some tools that maybe like somebody who's listening right now could use to manifest their success, because you've done such a great job of that yourself.
It also is like a little bit, it's like a kind of an obsession, I think, too. You kind of have to be like a little unhealthily obsessed with what you want, because if it's all you can think about and it's all you dream about, it's all you are, then unfortunately, I mean, then something will give and be that place for you. Because also like, being a model is a hard business. Being in fashion is a hard business. So you have to be obsessed with it. Otherwise, it's not worth doing it because it's too hard. So I think that's what I've started realizing. Like, if you really, really love it, then that's what you should be doing. And if you don't, then I think then you have to find yourself and like try something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So kind of like some more silly questions now, because I'm ready. I'm a silly girl and I ask silly questions.
Okay.
What is your least favorite fashion moment? Not even moment, I would say, but what's like your least favorite fashion trends? Like something that you like needs to go the fuck away.
I mean, listen, I'm not the biggest fan of like athleisure as clothes that you wear every day. Like, I'm just not. Like, I get it.
Same.
I love being comfortable. I totally understand it. I love a t-shirt and jeans. I love it. But I think like the legging and the sports bra as the look of the day, to the night, it's just a hard sell for me. Yeah. I get it. But like the fact that like there's only a line outside of Lululemon every day, that to me is dark times, guys. I'm like, really?
Yes.
I'm like, we work so hard on our craft, and then that's the line out the door. I can't. So it's hard.
I would agree with you, especially as I sit here in sweatpants and sweatshirt. But I just came off a flight, people, so don't judge me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, don't shade me,
But
Christian.
you like threw on a blazer with it and made it like a look. Like I mean, literally, I see people, and it's so interesting that and I get it, it's a comfy lifestyle, but I just think it's hard because all the people that work so hard on their craft to like just throw it away. Oh, sad.
Absolutely. I feel the same way about fast fashion. I feel like fast fashion is such a dark and tragic business, and it's really crazy. And to think that it's so wasteful and that people are just buying clothes to wear a few times only to throw away, I think it's really fucking sad and particularly tragic. And especially when there are such incredible artists like you. There was a time where people had like 3 dresses
or 3 awesome dresses, 1 great jacket, like, I think it's like, and it's
what's wrong with that? What's wrong with having like
it.
one beautiful thing that you can keep wearing?
Yeah. And I'm like starting to do that more. Like I'm starting to like use some pieces in collections. Like I'm going to use this dress from 4 seasons ago. Nobody cared about it. I'm going to put it back in. Like I'm like getting annoyed now. I'm like, I'm putting it in and watch it be like the hit of the season. No one can tell either.
Yeah.
Even people that work in my office are like, oh, is that a new dress? I'm like, no, it's 5 seasons old.
It's 5 seasons
I'm like,
old.
I'm really annoyed.
Yeah, that's crazy. Even to think of like the pace of fashion. Do you do resort and pre-fall collections?
And I do, but honestly, we're making them a little bit, we can't do so much anymore. And I think that is really interesting. Like, it's like, you can't, because I think people that we almost need to change that mindset that it needs to happen all the time. Like, I think it's better not to.
It's such a fucking rat race too, especially when you're thinking of like, and I honestly feel like resort and pre-fall collections have just sort of become kind of like a show pony of these kind of blue chip fashion brands like Louis Vuitton or like Dior, Fendi or whoever. And I'm not knocking them because I walked a lot of those incredible shows and they're really cool. And I'm not hating on them if you have the budget to do them. But I feel like sort of it sets a precedent that is unachievable for anybody else outside unless you have a multi-million-dollar budget every season. And I just I don't see where this is going. All I see is people, I just don't know nobody's buying these clothes.
I know, it's hard. That's the challenge. It's like, we have to figure out how to do a mid collection that is, it can be, it's tight and curated and just for like what your customer really wants or what you think maybe they're interested in. But I don't know, maybe we don't need so much because, you can't keep up with it. It's impossible.
And I sort of feel like before pre-fall and resort, before those collections became more mainstream, every year there are different fashion weeks for those even. There was Couture in between the ready to wear, and the Couture informed the ready to wear.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see like a return to Couture.
Yeah,
I would love to see more of a Couture presence in the United States, especially because so many of these Couture clients are in Texas.
I know, yeah.
You need strangely.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next kind of few months to a year. Like, we're getting out of the pandemic kind of, and now I do think that like things are going to change a little bit. They already have, and I think so many brands are trying to figure out kind of what works, and that's why for me, like that's why we're doing a show. And I was like, because it works for us in our world, and hopefully we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. What is a TV show or a movie that you've seen recently that like everybody has to see?
Oh my God, what is so good? I mean, I binged Ozark, obviously in quarantine, which is the best show. Did you watch it?
No.
You're insane. It's the best show.
Why is it the best show?
It's so good. It's about money laundering, and it's Laura Linney, and she's a genius, and it's crazy, and it's just really good. Okay, so you're gonna watch Ozark.
Okay.
Then what did we just watch that was really good? Okay, well, my really good friend is Christina Hendricks, and she's on this show called Good Girls, and it just got released to Netflix. It's been on ABC forever, but now it's like season 3. It's so good.
Okay.
And it's about moms who basically rob people. It's really good.
That sounds cool. That sounds really like up my alley, actually.
Yeah, they like rob like the grocery store because nobody thinks to like rob the grocery store. It's like really funny.
That's awesome.
They rob like a Sam's Club. It's genius. So that's a good funny. It's a stupid show, but it's hilarious.
What about any movies?
Okay, movies. What did I watch recently? God, I don't know. I watched a cool documentary about that hotel in LA.
The Cecil Hotel.
The Cecil Hotel.
Oh, I just learned about the Cecil Hotel.
Also, is it still kicking? Like, can people
I think it's still there. Yeah.
That's really weird. I was like, I don't think anyone should stay at this hotel. So
I'm dying to stay.
But now I kind of want to. I know.
Yeah, now I'm like like the Cecil Motel is now the new Chateau Marmont as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly.
So now hipster
Everyone's
LA
gonna be
twinks
there.
Can now go to the Cecil Hotel to rail lines of Coke off of toilet seats and save your money. The Chateau Marmont is expensive and not as glam as your pretentious friends say it is.
Exactly.
Just saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lindsay's gonna be at the Cecil Hotel really soon.
Yeah, Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. I feel like that would
Exactly.
be a great place to have her be spotted.
I mean,
People should start.
major.
I think the Cecil
She should
Hotel
just walk out
is
front.
making a come up, like for sure.
They should like do a campaign.
Something about this water tastes funny. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. I hope they scrubbed that tank out. Have you gotten to the part where she dies in the water?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Spoiler alert. There's a girl who dies in a water tower. I didn't even watch the series. I just saw one episode. And
it's good.
People explained what happened to me, but I'm totally enthralled with the history.
It's
of the
really,
Cecil
really
Hotel at
good.
the moment.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a good moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's it.
who is your favorite and least favorite Trump child? I asked Violet this, but I love this question.
Oh my God! None of the above. None of the above.
None of the above.
For any question.
I personally I gag for. I love Tiffany.
Of course.
Tiffany's a sleigh.
Of course.
Tiffany's major.
No.
I'm also living for Ivanka, even though she I feel like if there's going to be a great movie, and who's gonna play Ivanka in the Trump movie?
I'm
dying to know.
I do think that when it happens one day, Melania's book will be such an amazing tell-all of just. So I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, if she can even think of the English words to write down.
She can't. So that's so no problem. But
her ghostwriter will have to.
No, but I want it. I want it in that weird. I want it in all those creepy thoughts. I just am so curious. I really am.
Yeah.
That's it. I have nothing else.
Do you ever dress political figures from different countries? Have you ever dressed like a Saudi bride?
Yes,
or
a ton. I've dressed a ton of Saudi princesses, and yes, a ton. I love that
work.
Yeah, my team has been flown to Morocco to do a royal there a couple times. That was really fun. They're actually really fabulous, and they pay.
Yeah, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
It's not in this country.
Yeah, exactly.
It's overseas.
Yeah.
Is there speaking of the royals, what do you think of Meghan Markle? I know this is probably somebody you would like to dress, but what do you think of her departure from the royal family with Harry?
In an interesting way,
I celebrate it.
I think it's you know what? Maybe they just want to be real people. So I think that's okay.
Also, have you seen The Crown? Have you watched The Crown yet?
No, I haven't watched it. So that's
you haven't watched it?
No, I watched the first. I watched the first season.
Oh, they're crazy.
I know.
They're crazy.
I know.
In a very fabulous way, though, with the exception of the one who the Jeffrey Epstein prince.
Yes.
Very sad.
I do think Meghan though I do think for what she had thrown at her entire world, I do think she's very chic and elegant.
She's gorgeous.
I'm standing there.
Yeah. Has she worn any of your clothes
No,
yet?
I've never dressed her yet.
You need to dress Meghan Markle. I'm a huge fan, and I think she is. The annoying thing about the royals, especially the way they treat Meghan Markle, is that she can't do anything right.
That's what I mean.
For these
hard.
people. It's really frustrating because she's so gorgeous, and honestly, what a perfect face that she has. You know what I mean? What an attractive couple.
I know.
And I don't know. They're just hating on her because she's American and whatever. Have we been going for a long time?
Yeah, I was like, this is so long. I'm leaving you in a second.
I know. I'm sorry. It's been really long.
Tomorrow. What are we at?
45 minutes. Okay. Well,
50. No. I've been longer.
The sun is setting.
Sun is setting.
I know you have a show tomorrow. We're gonna wrap this up in a second. Okay, so let me just ask you one more question. For anybody out there who is thinking of dipping their toes in the fashion industry, what is the Christian Siriano word of advice to guide this young twink through their journey?
Oh my gosh. Their journey, let me tell you. I think it's like I said, you have to be obsessed. You have to be really passionate. I think it's about finding now, like, focusing on like what you're really, really good at. And if that is, sportswear or is it evening wear or is it cool whatever it is, I think you should make sure that you're making it perfect before you go into all these other elements. I think what's happening is some of the younger brands are doing so many things and then it isn't a success. Like, it has to be, what are you going to be known for? I would say that that's the focus. And I would say also, like, but there is a customer out there. Like, find who your people are, and it's okay that can be enough.
Yeah.
I think that's important too. I don't ever want people to think that, like, oh, I can't be a fashion designer because I don't appeal to all these different types of things or whatever. I think that's okay now. I think you can kind of find your little niche world and be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's my advice.
The advice of Christian is to find what you are good at and hone that skill.
Yeah.
And turn that thing into a brand and launch your life, your career, your whatever. Because I think that can be applied to anything. Because nowadays, everybody wants to dip their toes into so many things.
Yeah.
And I
even
find
that, even if you're a stylist, anything, like, make sure, like, you have a look, like I think it's more exciting to see that from a young brand or anything, just because you then really have a voice, and that's the hardest thing to figure out.
Yeah, and also a great example of this, of what you're talking about, not to bring this back to Donald Trump, but, like, we can't not. Donald Trump, maybe if he had honed some of his skills, maybe his casino wouldn't have failed.
Jesus.
Maybe his stakes wouldn't have failed. Maybe his college wouldn't have failed. Stick to what you're good at.
Stick to what you're good at. That's it.
Exactly. That being said, thank you so much for coming on my
Anytime.
pod.
Anytime.
You're the best.
So
I'm obsessed.
fun.
I can't wait
Thank
to
you for
walk
doing my show.
I know. I haven't actually walked the show yet,
excited.
but I'm going to walk it in less than 24 hours.
Yeah, literally. That's why I'm like, I gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. By the time people see this, I'm like, I hope I look good.
You're gonna.
I hope I look really good in the show.
It's gonna look really good.
Okay. My dresses are amazing. So
yeah,
I love you, Christian. Love you. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
And until the next one. Bye.